Good evening, and welcome to the General Society of Mechanics and Tradesmen of the City of New York. And the 8th season of the Artisan Lectures. This marks the start of our Spring Artisan Lectures series. I am Karen Taylor, Program Director of the General Society. This program is supported in part by public funds from the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs in partnership with the City Council. I would also like to thank Greenwood and all their staff, especially Lisa Albert and Sarah Durkis, for helping to arrange tonight's lecture. I also want to thank the New York Landmarks Conservancy for their assistance in promoting tonight's lecture. And finally, express our appreciation to Thomas Donoghue, our window curator, who has installed a special window display for tonight's talk. And many thanks to Greenwood for supplying that. Thank you so much. The General Society was founded in 1785 by the skilled craftsmen of New York City, artisans who represented 22 different trades, including carpenters, blacksmiths, saddlers, tailors, and silversmiths. That was just a few of the trades that was represented. Today, our 233-year-old organization continues to serve the people of the City of New York through our educational and cultural programs. These include our tuition-free Mechanics Institute, our Lock Museum, which is upstairs, and you're welcome to go and visit that after tonight's presentation, and the General Society Library, of course, which you're in this evening, and if you have any interest in membership, you'll find information on that on the front table. And our nearly 200-year-old lecture series, of which, of course, tonight is part of. You will also find additional information on the General Society on the blue and white postcard on your seat. Our speaker this evening is Neela K. Wickremesinghe, Manager of Restoration and Preservation at the Greenwood Cemetery. The General Society has had a long association with Greenwood, and a few of the members who lie in rest at Greenwood include William Colgate, Peter Cooper, Nathaniel Currier, James Harper, Abraham Stephen Hewitt, John McComb Jr., and Duncan Fife. Tonight, Neela will discuss some of Greenwood's well-known monuments and the sculptors and artisans who created them. In addition, she will detail how her department conserves sculptures and monuments and the craftsmanship inherent in the restoration process. Neela joined the Greenwood team in fall 2016. She holds a BA in Architecture and Urbanism from Smith College and an MS in Historic Preservation from Columbia University's Graduate School of Architecture, Planning and Preservation. It is now my great pleasure to introduce to you Neela, who will be speaking tonight. Thank you.
Great crowd, packed house. Thanks everyone for coming. Good evening, my name is Neela Wickremesinghe, and I'm the Manager of Restoration and Preservation at Greenwood Cemetery. I'd like to thank Karen Taylor and the General Society of Mechanics and Tradesmen for inviting me to speak this evening. The image behind me shows the view across New York Harbor from one of Greenwood's bucolic hills, created skillfully by both landscape designers and laborers, as well as the passing of prehistoric glaciers over the landscape. That combination of purposeful design intent and nature is at the crux of the Greenwood story. Views such as this capture the original idea of the cemetery, a rural escape from the ever-encroaching metropolis where visitors, tourists, and mourners can experience the natural landscape alongside beautiful sculpture, or, quote, nature in its finest dress, as described by David Bates Douglas, Greenwood's first civil engineer. Tonight, I will share some of the history of the Greenwood landscape and detail how it came to be one of the most beautiful landscapes in the city. I will highlight two of our better-known monuments and the conservation issues they both contain and some of the interventions that have been carried out to try to mitigate them. We will look into the artists who create these monuments and how funerary art was truly handmade, artistic endeavor carried out by noted craftsmen, designers, and architects. And finally, we will see how through the implementation of a permanent restoration department, we are recapturing some of the lost craftsmanship and handwork and infusing it back into this spectacular place. The Greenwood Cemetery was incorporated in 1838 with the first burials dating from 1840. The series of roads and paths seen on the left from an early 1846 map were frequented by carriages, strolling families, adults and children alike. Within the map, you can see the important addition of people in the illustrations, showing that this was indeed a place to be experienced and enjoyed by the public. The map on the right shows the cemetery in 1850, just 12 years after its start. In that short time, we can already see the expanded development of the cemetery. The existence of these two maps shows how important the public image of the cemetery was to its own success. The cemetery was cultivating an audience that would be captivated by its beauty, return again and again, and hopefully end up buying a plot there. Even then, the cemetery was inherently an outward-facing institution, seeking patrons and visitors inside its gates. Over its history, Greenwood became a sprawling 478-acre rural cemetery. The rural cemetery movement began in 1831 with the creation of Mount Auburn Cemetery in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Rural cemeteries were located just outside major urban centers, not further than a day trip, allowing for the intimate connection between nature and sculpture to form. Burial practices before this occurred in smaller church graveyards and family burial sites. As land became more valuable for real estate development and health and safety measures changed city dwellers changed where they were burying their dead. The rural cemetery movement was based on the inclusion of green spaces outside urban centers such as the English formal gardens and European parks. This movement, and of course, Greenwood Cemetery, predate the creation of public parks in New York City, as both Prospect and Central Park were not created until the late 1850s and 1860s. Public parks, as well as rural cemeteries, became important arenas where the public became face-to-face with monumental art created by skilled arts and crafts people from around the country. Monuments were reflective of the art and architecture popular at the time and were highly designed and ornamental. The same craftspeople who were creating work for cemeteries were designing the private houses and institutional buildings that would make up much of the historic fabric that is still extant in the city today. Over its history, Greenwood's relationship to the dense urban metropolis has also been exacerbated by the development that now runs right up to Greenwood's gates. We are no longer trying to escape the city of Lower Manhattan, but the borough of Brooklyn itself. Brooklyn is home to over 2.6 million people, and if it was its own city, it would be the fourth largest in America. The cemetery is now home to over 560 permanent residents, with over 300,000 pieces of monumental stone, and over 700 mausoleums and vaults, as well as other buildings, including the 1865 Richard Upjohn brownstone gates, seen here after its restoration in 2009. Our 1912 Warren and Wetmore limestone chapel, our pink granite gatehouse and comfort station on Prospect Park West, and brownstone superintendent's residence designed by Richard Upjohn's son, Richard M. Upjohn. All of the buildings and monuments came together to form a very curated, highly romanticized landscape. This image really gets at the heart of that romantic feeling. It evokes the seemingly natural, yet highly choreographed experience that appeared to propel the urban visitor back in time, to a place full of verdant trees, Gothic cathedral-like structures, and of course, the perfectly placed Greek temple. Now, the bucolic landscape is awesome, but To keep up the maintenance of this landscape, this is the flip side of that romantic view we just saw. Repair and grounds maintenance has always been part of the Greenwood story. In this picture, titled The Gravediggers, shows Greenwood's labor force from the late 1860s. However, on the back of this stereo view in pencil is written, "They don't look like gravediggers, more like gardeners with rakes and brooms, etc." I have to agree. They look like they were on grounds duty that day. However, when it comes to the care and maintenance of our monuments, we have generally followed what is known as perpetual care. Owners endow their lots to ensure that funds are available as time goes by to take care of the landscape and the monument. However, these funds rarely cover costs of maintenance over 180 years, and then the cemetery is seated with their perpetual care, basically forever. So we are the stewards of these monuments without being their actual owners. Unlike buildings or other artifacts that are in constant use and under threat of demolition, cemetery monuments and vaults are the conservation ideal. If everything goes according to plan, once installed, monuments and those inside them tend not to move. Okay. They are the perfect conservation control group, a collection of varied dressed building stones that give the exact date of installation, all with corresponding maintenance documentation. It's the perfect place to study the effects of weather and time on the lifespan of building materials in New York City. Ultimately, the cemetery was very successful in attracting lot holders that commissioned large monuments and sculptures that would continue to draw visitors. One of our most famous is the monument behind me. It was commissioned by the family of John Matthews. Matthews was known as the soda fountain king of New York, as he was one of the first people to successfully bring carbonated water or soda from England. The monument was carved by German sculptor Carl Mueller. John Matthews emigrated to the United States from England, where he was an apprentice to inventor Joseph Bramah. It was from him that he learned how to make machinery and, more importantly, learned how to make carbonic acid gas, the essential ingredient for soda water. Matthews manufactured carbonating machinery and distributed this product through retail stores. The Soda Water King's final resting place is a sarcophagus encompassed in a castrum doloris, Latin for castle of grief, a type of elaborate tomb frequently used for important religious and political figures. These tombs are adorned with funerary symbols, allegorical figures, and often scenes from the person's life. Artist and sculptor Carl Mueller worked as a goldsmith in Germany and was trained at the Royal Academy in Paris. Mueller created an eclectic monument for the Matthews family that drew thousands to Greenwood upon its completion. The monument is comprised of Nova Scotia brownstone, white Italian marble, and pink granite. This is one of my favorite monuments as it is a wonderful example of all the main materials found in the cemetery, a trio of building stones that make up much of the urban built environment we inhabit here in New York. The monument depicts John Matthews in repose, carved in white marble. Above him is a table of marble held up by granite columns with ornately carved marble capitals. The top arch and spire are brownstone with marble accents and cameos, and of course, a large marble female figure at the center of the monument. When this monument was first unveiled at the cemetery, the Brooklyn Eagle newspaper was on hand to report the scene. The newspaper described it as follows. On a recent Sunday, 2,000 persons were known to have visited the Matthews Monument, and there are numbers of people on weekdays as well as Sundays lingering about in vain to learn about the incidents in which it portrays. This is, without doubt, the most novel monument at Greenwood. A rave review. The monument even went on to win that highly sought-after award of Mortuary Monument of the Year, which I guess you can't enjoy if it's your mortuary monument. Mueller filled his commission with almost every kind of architectural allegory. There are wriggling lizards representing the ability to survive and maneuver the natural environment, hard-working squirrels, plump turkeys, faithful deer, strong bulls, loyal wolves, powerful eagles, determined rams, and courageous lions. a real who's who of the animal world. Each of these carvings was meant to deliver a message to the viewer, both about the life of the deceased John Matthews and that of the life of Carl Mueller. And when I recently visited this monument with a curator from the Metropolitan Museum of Art, she was able to point out one more detail that I had missed, a self-portrait of Mueller that he himself snuck into the piece. Of course, it shows him on a mule. You can see on the left-hand side, you can see it. As you can see from the contemporary photos of the Matthews Monument, this sculpture is suffering from a large range of conservation issues. There is some slight efflorescence or salt deposits forming under the brownstone. The top pinnacle is now missing, and much of the original marble looks to be melting or sugaring, which means it is disaggregating from its crystalline structure. This is oftentimes attributed to acid rain degradation. That may be true, however, the active freeze-thaw cycle common in the Northeast is even more to blame. Also, this monument is quite near the road where it is in close proximity to de-icing salts every time it snows. I also have a theory that the proximity of Greenwood to the ocean leaves its marbles especially susceptible to this type of weathering. One of the most striking losses is, of course, that of the statue that depicts John Matthews' wife. She has lost her head. This deterioration may have been furthered by the presence of salt above the statue, as seen by the staining underneath the brownstone arch. From these photos, it is also apparent that some sort of previous repair intervention was attempted within the marble details on the monument. A correspondence note from the lot file found by Greenwood historian Jeff Richmond recounts that in 1977, the family paid for repairs and cleaning of the monument. At that time, it was discovered that the large top pinnacle had loosened and it was removed. Further, it appears, based on cemetery records, that a substance was applied to the monument's marble in many places. This cementitious material, seen here under the microscope, consequently created a vapor barrier over the entire marble carving, creating more of a hazard for the substrate, as now when water and salt get into the monument, they are unable to get out. Further, this slurry mix that was applied to the marble has visually obscured the original surface of the carving, and we are now unable to fully monitor the surface in its entirety. And in the slide, you can see the exterior cementitious repair also has a lot of dark aggregate within it, and that's also very visually distracting on the exterior. And we see this a lot in conservation. Repairs that are done with the absolute best intention, but without the knowledge about how they themselves will hold up over time. So a lot of people ask me, are you scared to work at a cemetery? And I said, no, but I'm constantly haunted by these kinds of repairs. So no and yes. After going through all of the conservation issues with Matthews, I sort of feel like this gargoyle, where do we begin? But the good news is that this monument is structurally stable, and we have wonderful documentation that reveals the original details of the carving that have been ultimately lost. And loss is a very real part of conservation and restoration. Unless we have the monument recreated, we will never regain the original state of the sculpture. But that's okay. The monument still has secrets to share with us. It is still portraying a life well lived and the genius of sculpture with a mind of a true craftsman. Another one of Greenwood's most well-known monuments is the ornately carved marble memorial to Charlotte Kanda, designed by architect and sculptor John Frazee and Robert Launitz. John Frazee was born in Rahway, New Jersey in 1790. He is one of the first successful native-born American sculptors. He is best known for his portrait busts, including those of John Jay and the Marquis de Lafayette. He has carved sculptures for the Boston Athenaeum, including Chief Justice John Marshall and Daniel Webster. His partner for this project was Robert Launitz, a Russian-born sculptor with extensive experience in American funerary works that can be seen throughout the United States. The monument is a wonderful example of the explosively ornate neo-Gothic style expertly executed in fine-grained white marble. The monument was created for a young socialite, Charlotte Kanda, who on the night of her 17th birthday was tragically thrown from her carriage and died in her parents' arms. The heartbreak that surrounded this story made it a popular Greenwood monument from its installation in 1848, as well as a newspaper sensation throughout New York. The original design for this monument was actually attributed to Charlotte herself, as she had been sketching out the monument for an older relative at the time of her own death, just like a normal teen. John Frazee and Robert Launitz took her ideas and created a truly one-of-a-kind funerary monument. It contains allusions to her personal interests and her young age. The central statue wears a crown of 17 roses, and the monument is 17 feet tall. And her pet parrot is also included in the statue. The collection of marble sculpture depicts Charlotte as the central figure inside a Gothic tabernacle niche with elaborate tracery and finials. The central statue is surrounded by 4 carved marble bollards with ivy leaves, bursting bouquets of flowers, swags, bows, and pointed arches. The location of the statue underneath a marble arch has maintained the fine details of the original carving. Charlotte still has the waves of her hair, the pleats of her dress, and her crown of roses. The marble behind the statue also has retained its details. We can see the clouds and sun rays that stream down the back of the statue. However, the marble covering has also created a microclimate where rainwater cannot wash away surface grime and latent air pollution. The dark staining is apparent here. The dark staining that is apparent here is a hydrated calcium sulfate, or gypsum crust, commonly found on the undercuts of marble statues that are not evenly washed by rainwater. The transformation of calcium carbonate minerals in the marble to the formation of a gypsum crust around the original substrate causes some dramatic physical and visual changes. Gypsum has a much higher molecular volume than the carbonate material. This induces mechanical stresses in the stone, and the resultant expansion of the corroding black surface layers can be seen as an efflorescence that peels outward from damaged surfaces. And you can see here in the interlocking CCs for Charlotte Kanda, they appear to be blistering outward. The black gypsum crust becomes brittle, and the white marble beneath is powdery and very unstable. As well as interior issues, the exterior of the marble tabernacle and surrounding statues had over 100 years of biological growth and staining on almost all surfaces. A lot of biological growth can sometimes be seen as a beautiful part of the life cycle of outdoor sculpture. However, the plants that grow on porous stones, such as marble, are slowly disrupting the surface of the stone as they wear it away when they grow. To address the staining and vegetation on the exterior of the monument, Greenwood Cemetery, in partnership with Karcher, Germany, steam cleaned the monument during the spring of 2017. And Karcher is a company that invented industrial steam cleaning systems, and they have a great program where they clean historic monuments on a pro bono basis. We were able to partner with them on their first American project, and we were blown away by the results. Unlike a traditional power washer, this system uses low pressure and hot water to produce steam that kills biological growth on stone surfaces. And it looks great when you do the time lapse, but it was a great project. An integral part of this project were that we were given one of the steam cleaners by Karcher before they left. The restoration team and myself were trained by the Karcher staff on how to properly use the system throughout the cemetery to clean our collection of marbles. And we were able to get fantastic results, as you can see here. The exterior of the monument is now free from vegetation and biological growth. I'm not sure why this monument was spared from unsympathetic repairs and alterations, unlike the Matthews Monument, but I'm really happy that it was. And as an added bonus, when we were carrying out the cleaning, we removed some of the floral tops off the bollards, and we discovered a great signature. So we can see that John Frazee and Robert Launitz had some help from E. Walthen. Now, the steam cleaning was great for the vegetation. However, the gypsum crust needed to be removed by another method. I was able to get training from the Karcher team on their microabrasive system. We were able to use this small, pen-like apparatus to carefully blast away the gypsum crust from the bollards and from the flat surfaces within the tabernacle of the main statue. In order to complete this task, I had to climb into the niche next to Charlotte. Thankfully and creepily, we are about the same size. Here you can see the testing patch within the niche on the left, and then a larger, clean section on the right. I was able to clean the fragile surface of the interior statue as well as what I could physically reach around her. The flat areas within the arch side carvings also cleaned up very nicely and without surface damage. Now, the interior fleur-de-lis carvings were too fragile to be cleaned with the abrasive system. The gypsum crust was blistering, and the marble beneath it was sugared and loose. To conserve and clean these details, we were able to test a laser cleaning system. The laser cleaning quickly removed only the dark stained areas and left the white marble alone. This illustrates our test area. We hope to continue with the laser cleaning in the spring to complete the cleaning of Kanda before the end of the year. The John Matthews and Charlotte Kanda monuments are just two of the almost 300,000 memorials Greenwood Cemetery has under their stewardship. Both case studies illustrate how conservation interventions can try to repair, restore, and lengthen the life of elaborate outdoor sculpture. They also show us that there is no one way or one treatment that can be used in stone conservation to address all problems. Repairs are often done with the best intentions. However, as we saw in Matthews, if they are irreversible, they may cause more problems than they solve. As for Kanda, the monument required aqueous steam cleaning, low-pressure microabrasive particulate treatments, and laser cleaning, and we're still not done. So when it comes to restoration issues at the cemetery, we have these two extremes and absolutely everything in between. The historic cemetery is no longer seen as a landscape where stone sculptors and artists can refine their skills and gain patronage from influential families. But it is, however, a landscape full of restoration potential. With the creation of a permanent restoration and preservation department, we are actively reinstating traditional methods of repair and restoration throughout this historic landscape. Craft truly has a place here once again. Through departmental training in hand carving and splitting, I was able to give my staff a working knowledge of the hand tools and techniques used in the past to create the monuments and sculptures seen throughout Greenwood Cemetery. Here you can see the restoration team learning to carve marble, limestone, and granite with hand and pneumatic tools. Within the department, we also use contemporary silicone mold-making techniques to replicate missing parts of monuments where there are repeating elements, allowing for the original design of the monument to still read clearly in the landscape. And for this project, we were able to replicate the one existing marble vase we had and recreate the missing three. We are also able to run community outreach programs with the Department of Education and local high schools. These teaching opportunities help us to engage our community, show them the type of work we do here at the cemetery, and let them see that Greenwood is as much a place for the living as it is for the commemoration of the dead. And as the crux of our work continues to be the conservation and restoration of historic monuments, we are also invited to collaborate on additions to our sculpture collection with contemporary artists. Here we're installing the latest sculpture at Greenwood by artist Sophie Cowell. Like the unveiling of the Matthews Monument, this event drew thousands of people, all waiting to interact and connect with contemporary art. But unlike that monument, this was fabricated and installed by Greenwood's Restoration Department. We look forward to maintaining and conserving this sculpture throughout its time at Greenwood, as we do the rest of our esteemed collection. Thank you.
Neela, that was fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We would now like to take some questions. Because this is being video recorded, I would ask if you wait till the mic comes to you so we can hear the question. Thank you. Who would like any questions?
Hi, great presentation. Very
Thank you.
Impressive restoration work. I had a couple questions about the Kanda
Yes.
memorial. What was the pressure of the steam? You said it was low pressure?
It has to be the absolute lowest that the machine will allow, so that only a little bit of water is coming through, and as soon as it does, it creates steam. So it's extremely high temperature. It's over 300 degrees. And you can put your hand in front of it. The pressure won't hurt, but the steam will.
The steam will, right.
Yeah.
Okay, and the other question was the microabrasive.
Yes.
What was the medium that you used for that?
We use an aluminum slag.
And very, very tiny? Very
Extremely
small?
tiny.
Yeah.
That's why I sort of was suited up, also
I
with
saw that. Yeah.
with a breathing apparatus, because it gets everywhere.
And are you training your staff to use both those pieces of equipment?
Yes, so because we now own the steam cleaning machine, we're able to do extensive training. It was wonderful collaboration between Karcher and Greenwood. They were with us to do 3 major cleanings, and through that we were able to do training with their entire restoration staff.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
So, when you recreated the urns, what's the material that the new ones are cast?
Concrete, but instead of sand, we use a marble dust, or we sieve our marble to make sure we have all the same size, and so that in raking light or on direct sunlight, it looks a little bit like marble.
Okay, very good, thank you. The funny thing is, I do concrete casting, and we specifically take pieces and coat them in yogurt, so they get the green molded age.
It's for film. You put it on, Neela takes it
I mean, people like, the old green molded,
So like the
statuary.
opposite of that.
The opposite,
Yeah,
exactly. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. I have a question about funding. I imagine there must be monuments that the families are long gone and nobody's still paying. Do those get maintained?
We do. We try to maintain them as best we can, and I think that the creation of the Restoration Department as a full-time endeavor is showing the cemetery's support. We have great support from our board and our historic fund, and every time that you come and visit us and give us a donation or show your support in another way, we're able to do this kind of work. So tell your friends.
Thank you.
Are there any products that you do recommend if you're dealing with outdoor sculpture that is 19th century, not marble, 18th, it's not 18th century, it's just 19th century? And they do have some new products out now that are sealants, and they do get recommended by the conservators, but
Yes.
have you encountered any of those and their detriments at this point?
Thankfully, because I am not working with contemporary sculpture mostly, even the Sophie Calle installation, that is a historic piece of marble. So not in my wheelhouse, but it is usually the case that anything that you can't undo, it's tough for any conservator to really fully endorse. Yeah.
Second question, do you ever have monuments that you wrap, which was such a traditional technique to preserve, maybe not the ones that have writing on it and saying who died there, but just the wrapping technique that you see in so many 18th century estates?
Because we are we're a historic cemetery and we're meant to be viewed in all seasons. Our main group of people that we support as our lot holders, you know, so when you come to visit us, if you have a loved one buried at Greenwood, we're here for you. That landscape is for you as well as our other visitors. So I don't think we would wrap things because it's not the tradition within our landscape.
What is your policy on enhancing or restoring writings on stone and marble?
I am not a stone carver, and I think that would be up to the family. If the family said, I would like to recarve this epitaph, and we had a really good photograph, then that would be completely up to them. As we are continuing our sort of first do no harm approach to conservation, we would do what we needed to do in terms of securing the monument and then move to the next one.
Just a comment. There's a lot of historical information in that writing, and so sometimes the loss is more than just the family's loss. It's everyone who studies these monuments' loss. So it seems like it would be useful to at least try to record or figure out how to photograph at a better angle or whatever much of that writing in order to try to preserve it for historians.
That's true, and I think you touch on an important part, which is the first step of any sound conservation treatment is documentation. So we have records of our repairs, everything that we've done since I started, and that's the number one thing that we do. So even if we do have something that might weather further, we will have excellent documentation. And we're lucky that Greenwood has wonderful stereo views, and I often say that each one of the monuments that you see represents a person's life, but they also represent a stack of paperwork that we might have for them in our wonderful archives. So it's never truly unmarked. Yes?
Oh, can you hold on? Sorry, I'm so sorry.
As far as the documentation, how far does it go back with your, every person as far as having it documented, other than what's stamped on the stone or carved into the stone?
We have a lot of associated pieces of paper that go within our lot holders. So we have, it changes for a lot of different people, but we have so many wonderful things to look at when it comes to each and every one of our monuments and the people that they represent.
I'm wondering if you are a friend or a foe of the monk parrots.
They are very chatty. I like them. They allegedly keep the pigeons away, which is good because pigeons tend to bring pigeon droppings, which is not great for brownstone. The monk parakeets that this gentleman is referring to live in our brownstone arch, and they're our tenant. That's fine.
Okay.
Do you know what happened to one of the 4 pink granite pillars in the Matthews monument that made it lose its shine?
I do not. I didn't find any documentation about that, but when it comes to the Matthews Monument, that's sort of the least of our problems, so I'll take that.
And Neela, in terms of encouraging visitors, could you just tell us about that? Are there tours for those of us who are now interested in seeing?
Of course. I hope every single one of you comes out to Greenwood if you haven't already, and bring all of your friends and small children. And come, we have our trolley tours on Wednesdays and Sundays. We have all kinds of public programming, over 200 public events this year, from talking about our famous people who are buried at Greenwood and our wonderful landscape. We're also an arboretum, so there's something for everyone here, really.
Neela, I just want to say thank you so much again. That was really a fantastic presentation. It was so comprehensive, so informative, and really wonderful to find out about the merge of technology and old techniques, and you illustrated that beautifully. So many, many thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
On occasions like these, we like to make a presentation, and if you've been here before, Neela, maybe you know this, but we would now like to make a presentation to you and to thank you again for being one of our lecturers. And to do so is Victoria A. Dangle, our Executive Director.
Yes, and thank you, Neela. That was wonderful, and thank you for doing it with such what could be a solemn topic. You definitely brought humor to it, so thank you. So on behalf of the General Society of Mechanics and Tradesmen of the City of New York, founded 1785, we express our gratitude to Neela K. Wickremesinghe, Manager of Restoration and Preservation at the Greenwood Cemetery, for your memories and monuments, preservation and practice at the Greenwood Cemetery, for your participation in the General Society Artisan Lecture Series. So thank you.
Thank you.
And because, Neela, we've come to really like you already, so we've made you an honorary member of the General Society of Mechanics and Tradesmen Library.
Thank you so much.
For your lifetime.
Yes. A bigger investment than others.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
And finally, a little memento of the evening. And there will be a General Society tote bag, but I'm afraid it's not here at this very moment, but it will be delivered to you before the end of the evening, so.
Thanks very much.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. I want to thank you all for coming, and I hope you'll be back during this present series. We have another artisan lecture coming up next week with a young sculptor and designer called Abigail Tullis, and you'll be very welcome for that. I also want to mention, because it's a connection to Greenwood, I think I'm right in thinking that the Steinway Mausoleum is part of Greenwood. Well, on Tuesday, June 12th, we will have an artisan program with one of the artisans from Steinway Pianos. So there's a good link. And finally, just as a matter of curiosity, how many of you here tonight have been to Greenwood before? Oh, yes, excellent. And as Neela said, I'm sure the rest of you will be making your way, or Victoria suggested, to Greenwood. Thank you so much for coming. I'm sure Neela will be happy to answer more questions informally. And please now join us for a glass of wine. Thank you.